What is up? What is up? Week 2, -1 game is in the books, and we have a lot to talk about, particularly, unfortunately, from an injury standpoint. But we do have a lot of awesome reactions. I mean, the Buccaneers just absolutely making me one of the happiest fans in the world here by taking down probably the NFC Super Bowl favorite in a tough matchup against the Lions. Lots to break down. Danny, we should start with injuries because we've had some news trickle in so far today about some of the major injuries. We also saw some big name dudes going down, leaving games early, coming back banged up and stuff. Like St. Brown, specifically in that Bucs game, was not healthy. He was playing through some stuff. The big bomb drop today, as far as like timeline is concerned, is Isaiah Pacheco, who fractured his fibula, an ankle, obviously in his lower leg. It is expected that he's put on IR, and it is possible that he is out probably the entire fantasy football season. Like, it is actually possible he's out 12 weeks.
It's just so unfortunate. Obviously, we were high on Isaiah Pacheco, and I think the early signs through the first 2 games prior to the injury, like, it looked good. He was running efficient. He was getting the workload that we wanted. He was playing on all 3 downs. Like, it really sucks that it had to be Isaiah Pacheco. Obviously, again, spoiler alert, the Chiefs running back going to be a quite the hot commodity on the waiver wire this week. Man, I just wish it was Pacheco.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of, and somebody actually commented this, it reminds me a lot of 2022 when Javonte Williams was one of our dudes, and he just went down week 2 of the season before we really got to see what he was capable of, and that's kind of what Pacheco going down reminds me of here. Hopefully, it's a minor grade 1. Dr. Jesse Morris broke it down. Everything I talk about fantasy-wise in terms of timelines in these streams, I take from fantasy doctors. I'm not a doctor. I just go through and I kind of aggregate the information that they put out. He said it's possible he's only out 4 to 6 weeks, which would be huge, awesome news, because he would obviously be back at some point. But a fractured fibula is the precise injury that Tank Dell had last year that kept him out the rest of the season. It also happened to Jalen Waddle his final year at Alabama, and he missed 11 games for that and the entire draft process pretty much. And I believe Mark Andrews had this injury last year as well.
Well, I mean, there's 2 parts to it, especially because he's a running back, right? Obviously, the function of the leg when your fibula is obviously compromised is not great. On top of that, you're a running back who's going to be running between the tackles. You are going to be eating hits to your fibula straight up. You're going to be hitting it down low, especially when you're a hard-nosed runner like Isaiah Pacheco who runs with leverage. People are going to be tackling you low. So I'm concerned, again, 4 to 12 weeks, hoping it's going to be on the former. But like you said, especially from a running back who's going to touch the ball 20 times per game, especially between the tackles with 250, 300-pound men around him, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, no, it's not. There was a lot of like rolled up on injuries yesterday where they were just awkward kind of bullshit injuries where they just almost seemed unlucky. Also, shout out to Christian and Rolando in the chat. We will get to your supers at the end of the stream. Yeah. So if you guys do want to super chat us, again, either save that for tonight's stream before we go live before the game, or just wait until the end because we will answer some questions at the end. But we usually just kind of go through the slate in these Monday streams here. Cooper Kupp was the other big one, big name guy who was slated pretty much to be a top 5 receiver for as long as Puka Nacua would be out for. Left high ankle sprain. As of now, it looked somewhat minor according to a lot of the doctors that I looked into.
He did not play through it, which is good.
No, he didn't. He was ruled out pretty much immediately. A lot of people think it will be between a 1 to 4 week absence. Hopefully he avoids IR. Hopefully it's just a 1-game absence. For those wondering, it is the opposite ankle that he had the tightrope surgery on. So it's not the same one that he suffered the major high ankle sprain on in 2022. So that's good news, at least, that he's not dealing with the exact same ankle, because that could probably flare up a little bit. But regardless, I mean, Cooper Kupp, thankfully, I was playing against him in my home league, and I'm definitely I need 14.5 points from Drake London in PPR with big play bonuses to win tonight. I definitely would have lost if Cooper Kupp had played that whole game.
Yeah, and I mean, it's glad to know that it worked out for you in your home league, because in my home league, let's just go through my roster. Again, we'll count also a guy that I had to drop because, spoiler alert, it's a quarterback. So I had to drop Jordan Love. Obviously, he got hurt. Puka Nacua. Jonathan Brooks, who, again, I drafted him knowing he would be hurt, whatever. Still, 3 players already. David Njoku, Tank Bigsby, Cooper Kupp. 6 players on my roster that I drafted are fucking hurt by week 2.
Yeah, not great.
And I lost my 2 points this week.
Yeah, that's not great. I have Njoku, Higgins, and Brooks in my home league too, so I'm already feeling the injury bug as well. In the flock league, I've dodged some injury bullets, and they've actually benefited me because I have Charbonnet, for example, and Walker's been out and could be out for another game or two. here going forward. But yeah, Kupp was one of the other major injuries. We also, of course, saw Joe Mixon on Sunday Night Football have a right medial ankle sprain is what they're calling. Apparently a very rare injury, but we have seen it's possible that he has a high ankle sprain talk among the fantasy docs over on Twitter. He did return briefly for a couple snaps, but he did leave again. And Cam Akers took over the starting job in his absence, fumbled on the goal line. Dario Gumbawale was involved. It's worth noting that Dameon Pierce was out for this game with a hamstring injury after practicing in limited capacity last week. So this backfield, again, will be a talk of the waiver discussion for sure. I would expect Joe Mixon to miss some time, according to what I read and according to what these doctors have said. Same ankle as his Liz Frank injury in 2020 that caused him to miss 10 games as well. And he's, of course, an older running back. And as we talked about, I mentioned this on the Sunday morning live stream with Aaron Jones. It's like these older running backs, you don't have to worry about them in week 1 or 2 when they're 100% healthy. What you need to worry about is the second they start getting banged up and they'll lose their efficiency and lose all their juice because they have all these touches under their belt. So hopefully we get good news on Joe Mixon and he's only out a game or 2 games or maybe none at all. But there's a good chance he's going to miss some time. And there's also a good chance that it could linger because he's an older guy.
Yeah, it's just you're getting a running back with the amount of touches under his belt across his career, obviously on his second team. It sucks too because Joe Mixon looked fucking.
He looked great. He's looked great so far this year.
So like the fact that he does get hurt again, this was always going to be an issue, a concern for these older running backs. I mean, it kind of always feels like at this point, or not always feels like, but kind of feels like at this point in the season, like all of the older running backs have kind of succumbed to some type of injury. And man, I'm just hoping he's okay. Obviously, again, he's going to miss some time most likely. But if you are on the waivers right now, whether it's Dameon Pierce, whether it's Cam Akers, you still want pieces of this backfield. Again, we'll talk about it in the full waiver segment. But this backfield, regardless of who's going to be the main running back, has the opportunity to seed some fantasy points because the way CJ Stroud, and again, we'll get into Nico Collins in a second, the way they looked last night against what's a really good Bears defense. Like the Bears,
especially secondary, especially their secondary is really good.
Dude, like I'm in disbelief again. I'm kind of slurring my words right now, just like thinking about that Nico game because I feel vindicated right now. We'll get into that in a second, though.
Yeah, a couple other major injuries. We had Tank Bigsby, shoulder, didn't return, looked bad, ruled out immediately. There's a good chance he's going to miss extended time, probably a drop for a lot of you guys, and ETN probably sees a little bit of an upgrade. Tajay Spears, ankle injury, didn't return. I think we got some news on it this morning from Ian Rappaport. I don't think it's supposed to be super serious, but let me take a look because I believe right before we went live, I saw something about it. Will Levis's fumble. Okay, I don't actually see anything about it at this moment. Okay, Spears should be okay. Nothing major is what he said here. So it's probably not likely that he misses extended time, but he did leave the game and didn't return. And then the other one was on Thursday night. Tua suffers the concussion, has the fencing reaction again. That scared the shit out of all of us. The last severe concussion he had in 2022 was a 4-week absence. So I would say relatively similar timelines is probably what we're looking at here. It doesn't sound like he's going to retire. Doesn't sound like we're going to be without him for the rest of the season, but Dr. Jesse Morse didn't actually rule that out. He said it's possible that his doctors might recommend he sits out the whole season. He's consulting neurologists. There's head injuries are always like they're case by case basis. You have no idea. He could be back this week or he could miss the entire season.
Yeah, knowing that this is a common theme for Tua, obviously it's his third concussion in the last 2 years is not the situation.
I think it's his fourth in his career too.
Fourth in his career, third in the last 2 years. Like I've had concussions before, especially a lot of concussions in a short period of time. I'm just hoping he's functioning okay because, like, to be honest, like you're gonna see some changes to him, like straight up. Like if he rushes this back, you're looking at potential, like not even just damages in the short term. We're looking at irreversible damage. So again, I'm praying that he's talking to people that he trusts. He's talking to the neurologists around him. He's figuring out the timeline that works for him if he is going to come back because you come back too early in this thing and like it's life threatening. It really is.
It is. Yeah. And I've had a severe concussion where I couldn't play sports for like 3 months playing basketball when I was 13 or 14. So yeah, I know the concussion situation is like, you can't rush it. You have to, especially when you've had a couple of severe ones with that reaction too. I mentioned, I don't know if this is a stupid take or not, but like, should he be wearing the Guardian helmet going forward if he's going to be playing football? Because that might help him a little bit. I don't know how much it actually does, but
like for example,
that his doctors recommend. I don't know.
The way he specifically hit the ground, I would assume so, because people are looking at it like, oh, like obviously DeMar Hamlin made the hit, but the reason the concussion happened was because he made the hit and Tua was basically sitting up and then just thudded right back on the back of his head. So again,
Yeah, no, and I think he
scary
was hit on the
situation.
crown of his head too in the initial hit as well. So yeah, not great. Of course, if you have Tyreek Hill, if you have Jalen Waddle, if you have Devon Achane,
Severe downgrade.
it's a severe downgrade. I think Achane is the least affected by it because he's probably going to catch a lot of passes. The Dolphins
Tyreek
actually
second.
signed Tyler Huntley today, so that might be a quarterback upgrade over Skylar Thompson, who clearly isn't an NFL quarterback, just by all indications. I think they still have Mike White on their practice squad as well, who might be
How did Skylar Thompson beat him out to the job?
I don't know, but if Mike White is still on the roster, hopefully he is there. I could be wrong on that. Maybe you can fact check me quickly.
Yeah.
We did have some minor injuries, but to some major names. So it sounds like Justin Jefferson, who his injury looked bad when it happened. It's a quad contusion / Charlie
Bills.
Horse. He's on the Bills. Okay, yeah. There's
Bills
somebody
now.
that they mentioned on the practice squad. It's probably just Tyler Huntley that's going to compete with
Matt Barkley, maybe, or something like that.
Maybe, I'm not sure, but Justin Jefferson, like I said, his injury doesn't appear to be severe. Dr. Jesse Morris seemed that he wouldn't miss any time, but it is possibly misses one game with it. I would imagine Justin Jefferson's probably fine going forward. Amon-Ra St. Brown, same thing. It looks like he hurt himself bad, like an MCL sprain or something like that. But it is officially reported by Shefty today that it was just a contusion / cramping. So Amon-Ra St. Brown both and Jefferson both should be fine going forward.
When that happened in the game, I thought it was straight up an MCL sprain because
I thought it was
the way his knee twisted. Like again, like the common joke on the channel is like anytime somebody has an MCL sprain, I have to add my input because I suffered a pretty bad one back in my day. But lucky he did not have one because that would have been a few weeks.
Yep. And then a couple minor injuries that don't appear to be severe at all. Anthony Richardson grabbed his hamstring on one of his runs. He looked fine. After that, Jaden Daniels, well, not from a football standpoint, he didn't look fine, but from a health standpoint, he did. Jaden Daniels got a massive hit to the ribs. He came back in. He was fine by the looks of it.
Let a game-winning drive.
Yeah, Justin Herbert had some kind of leg injury, but he did return. Rashad White had a groin, did return, and then George Kittle had cramping and did return. So those were
monster
like the other
game
injuries. Breece Hall was in the medical tent for a brief period of time. I didn't actually hear anything about his injury. I don't know if you saw anything about that.
Well, I know he missed out a couple plays. So that was happening, I believe, during the 1 p.m. slate because I was watching the Cowboys game. So I had Red Zone on the side. So I was like half in, half out watching Red Zone while I was watching the Cowboys game. And I noticed Ron tweet out, "Oh no, Breece," or something like that. And I was like terrified for a second. And then 2 seconds later, he's just like, "Oh yeah, he's back in the game." So probably just a minor thing, got checked up, got cleared. They were using 2 backs at times, even throughout the game.
I think it was because he was a little banged up, but Braylon Allen, I mean, he's got to be one of the club front runners for best handcuff in fantasy. Like if anything,
he looks great, man.
Braylon Allen might be like a top 7 running back rest of season. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure they would involve Isaiah Davis and some of the other guys, but Braylon Allen looks great. And there's a chance that if Breece misses any time, he's a huge league winner.
This won't be the only time in the stream that I have to eat crow. I have to eat crow because I believe I had Allen as my RB7 or my RB8 is what I ended up on him as. And that's straight up looking too low. Like he looks like he should have been ranked in the top 5, to be honest.
Yeah, I definitely moved him up as the draft process went along, and I'm glad he looks a lot better. I remember the game that I watched. I'd watched 3 games of tape on him. One was against like Ohio State, one was against I think Iowa, and there was another game that I watched on him coming out of Wisconsin, and then I watched a game against Buffalo early in the 2023 college football season. I was like, this guy looks a lot more like the 17-year-old.
He moved different.
Yeah. I think he must have been dealing with something, and a lot of people, Wisconsin fans and stuff, pointed out like scheme stuff that was hampering him in 2023. So yeah, he was a weird prospect. Again, I think you kind of just needed to trust the fact that this guy was super young and probably didn't know what the hell he was doing or how to move in his freakishly large body at this point in his life. And the Jets running back coaches and Breece Hall, whoever is helping him get up to speed in the NFL, is doing a really good job because I've seen a pretty significant jump from the 2023 Braylon Allen to this one.
It's funny because, again, like we'll talk about some of the takeaways right away, but the younger prospects that are maybe not finished products coming out have been the ones that have been hitting straight up. Like those are the ones that be hitting. Again, we'll talk about the quarterbacks in a second because I mean, like they've all kind of looked bad, but one in particular people have really talked about in depth, which I'm sure you're understanding what I'm referring to. But got to give credit to Allen. He looked good. If Breece Hall misses any time, he's going to be a locked and loaded top 10 back.
And speaking of the quarterbacks looking bad, the offensive rookie of the year race is wide open because the quarterbacks are looking bad. And Drake May is an awesome bet right now because he's not starting games. So his odds will probably be pretty low. But once he gets in there, the quarterbacks are not setting a high bar currently. If
he wins 40 to 50% of his games as a starter and he takes over the job week 4, week 5, he's going to win it.
I also think you could argue he looked the best of all of them in the preseason too.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
made
so
some great
that's
throws.
just an interesting side note. Anyways, let's get into some of the biggest
Just-
takeaways of the week.
I would be a fraud if I didn't bring this up as my takeaway number one. Again, you could talk about it in one way or another. Can you talk about it with the glass half empty that the Cowboys defense looked just completely out of wax? Yeah, I'll give you that. They looked awful yesterday. My takeaway though is that we got the New Orleans 49ers because that offense is fucking scary. Like the motion rate, the overall speed of play, their ability to run the football despite what came into the year as a bad offensive line. Clint Kubiak, I don't know where he's going to be a head coach next year, but it's going to be somewhere, whether it's in Dallas, whether it's wherever he wants to go, because he's a blank check at this point, to be honest. What I've seen from him, again, you see the difference in the offense. 13 to 51% play action rate from last year to this year. Literally the last in the league last year to the first in the NFL thus far in the first 2 weeks. Pull up that as well. Design rollouts, like you said, quadrupled in terms of the rate this year compared to last year. Motion at the snap is the big one, 14 to 41%. Man, the Saints motion was just poetic to watch. The screens that they were able to accomplish off of it. Obviously, they were able to establish the ground game, getting push up front. The play action shots were absolutely killing us. Rashid Shaheed obviously catches one over the top on a post shot off of play action early in the game. I believe the second drive of the game. I mean, it's just the run game, Kamara looking fresh, right in this scheme, perfect fit for this scheme, which again, if we had said 24-year-old Kamara was able to play in a 49ers Shanahan scheme offense, it would have been toast for the league. But the fact that he's 29, injury concerns, I was way too low on Alvin Kamara. I am ready to eat my crow right now. Like I mentioned, this is not the first time I'll eat crow in this video when I talk about Allen. Alvin Kamara, I think at this point has to be considered at least a mid-range running back one moving forward. The way he looks, the way this scheme is playing, the way he has recaptured the
4
efficiency.
touchdowns.
I mean, the goal line roll, the efficiency. Like, I did not think I would see a 29-year-old running back gain back all of his efficiency from when he was in his prime, and that's exactly what we've seen from Alvin Kamara. Shout out Clint Kubiak. I was not baking that in quite enough. I thought that this would be a potential bottom 5, bottom 7 type of offense in the league. I'm not unconvinced that this is not going to be a top 8 offense in the league, potentially even top 5. That's how good it looks.
Oh, for sure. And I think part of the analysis conundrum me and you have, and other people have too, is do you value volume or do you value efficiency at the running back position? Because sometimes there's examples of both sides. There's examples of bet on volume, hope for efficiency. And, Kamara would be one of those examples right now where he's much more efficient in a better scheme. And there was context behind maybe he could be more efficient and that kind of thing. But then there's also examples like J.K. Dobbins, for example, where J.K. Dobbins was efficient his whole career. By the way, the only NFL running back in NFL history to have 250 plus carries in his career, over 6 yards per carry in his career. Like, he's been extremely, extremely efficient his entire career, but we just never got the volume. And now we're getting the volume and we're seeing what's happening. So there's examples of both sides of things. And it's literally a case-by-case basis. Like, if you told me going into the year that Kamara, this scheme was going to work, I would have drafted Kamara way higher. And I was higher on Kamara than you were, but I still was like, I need to get him like round 5, round 6 to be in on him. And I think he was fine where he was going for the most part in a lot of my leagues where, running backs were falling. But, I mean, in hindsight, he probably should have been going in like the 3rd or the 4th round.
Luckily, because when we recorded over in Texas with Flock, we talked about our must-draft running backs and receivers, our must-avoid running backs and wide receivers. My must-avoid wide receiver was Terry McLaurin. That looks like an absolute smash at this point.
Yep.
My must-draft running back was Devon Achane. My must-draft wide receiver was Nico Collins. All of that feels great, except for the fact that I look at my must-avoid running back being Alvin Kamara, and I want to like cover my eyes every time I look at that.
Well, I mean, Aaron Jones was my must-avoid running back, so I'm not looking any greater on that.
Ty Chandler looked good.
He did, but Jones is like, again, Jones and Kamara are the same type of guy right now. It's like, I'm not worried about them yet. If they suffer some nagging injuries, I might be a little bit worried about them, but part of one of the things that I need to take going forward, especially for managed redraft leagues, is early in the year, like these older running backs who've shown to be elite guys, like they're gonna hold
James Conner too.
The first couple weeks of the year that you're gonna be able to trade. Like, you could trade Alvin Kamara for virtually any running back you want right now if you wanted to. If you were scared that he's gonna taper off down the stretch, which I wouldn't be totally against you if you said, yeah, I want to trade Kamara and go and get Jonathan Taylor right now because I'm worried about Alvin Kamara's efficiency down the stretch. Like, you could do that. I'm just saying, like, us thinking, hey, there's no, like, in best ball, it makes sense. Okay, I'm not drafting Kamara because I need him, weeks 15 to 17 when the points mean the most, and I'm only gonna get him at a good discount. And on Underdog, he was going at a reasonable price. It's just in managed redraft leagues, thinking that I'm not drafting this guy because weeks 1 to 17 is when I have to hold him, especially knowing the way you and I are with how we trade all the time. Like, there's no real reason that we should not like early season projections for the way that we operate in fantasy football.
And I mean, again, we do content for a living. We do our research for a living. You guys follow us for a reason. There's still things we're learning on a day-to-day basis. I do feel like, especially from my perspective, the thing that I've been undervaluing mostly in home leagues is, like you said, the early season utility, the early season workload for some of these guys, especially guys that have done it before. So understanding, again, like in the long term, do I want to be making the bet on an older running back not succumbing to that workload? Across 17 games, I want to be trading out at some point, sure. But knowing that I have the opportunity to be able to make a deal after week 3, week 4, week 5, after a couple of good games, that's something I got to bake in more moving forward. Like, although I am scared that James Conner will still miss games at some point this year, may succumb to the workload, especially knowing that last year was his peak season. At the same time, it didn't take a genius to realize in the first few weeks he would be a workhorse running back.
Yeah, well, and not only that, but like if the way casual and redraft leagues work, if Connor and Kamara and Jones and all these older running backs have fantasy production week 1, week 2, week 3, and then they start to taper off from an efficiency standpoint week 4, week 5, week 6, but they're still scoring touchdowns or whatever, it's a good chance your league mates aren't going to be the wiser anyway if you try and sell them at that point when you notice that their efficiency is tapering off, and the production's maybe not sustainable. That's when you kind of make those moves. So that's, like you said, we're still learning shit. Fifth season doing this now, and we're still learning stuff week over week. And speaking of learning stuff, people around the country need to learn the name Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because the Bucs win an absolute heater, and I have no idea how they won this game. I was mentally preparing myself to lose and potentially lose big. Like I didn't think we were going to be competitive in this game, given the amount of injuries we had on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, our right tackle was probably the worst offensive line play I've seen in years. Like Aiden Hutchinson had like 5 sacks in this game, and we still won because of, smart, opportunistic defensive backs like Zion McCollum making plays when he needed to make plays. Our defensive line played out of their mind, even though half of them were backups. And our linebackers, I haven't seen a better effort from Levante David and Servatia Dennis.
Is Vita okay?
In a while.
Is Vita okay?
It sounds like he's probably going to be out a couple weeks now. Like our defense is decimated with injuries. Cansey's out, Vea's out, Winfield's obviously out. Like our defense, aside from Jamel Dean and Levante David, our best defensive starters are out pretty much.
This is why you want a well-coached team, because in spite of all those injuries, you guys are 2-0.
Diaby got hurt in this game defense, too. Who's our best edge rusher?
You guys held arguably a top 5 offense in the league to 16 fucking points at home with those.
Yeah, and they ran 85 offensive plays in that game.
Yeah, but honestly, I got
16 points. I don't know how the hell that happened, dude. We got killed in the time of possession. We ran like 46 offensive plays.
I mean, if we just combine the first 2 takes, honestly, a big macro takeaway of the week is maybe the NFL is just like closer than we anticipated, because we went into the week like, oh yeah, there's clear tiers. Like obviously the Chiefs and the Niners look like the 2 best teams in the league. And then you got like the Cowboys, the Ravens, the Texans, like all these teams kind of in that second tier. But like this just shows you that any given Sunday, a team can fucking mollywop another team. The Saints mollywop the Cowboys. For example, you guys just go out on the road to beat the Lions. We saw the Niners lose to Sam Darnold and the Vikings. The
Raiders beat the Ravens.
The Raiders beat the Ravens. The Chiefs needed a fucking PI on 4th and 16 to kick a game-winning field goal against the Bengals. Like, there's just so much that happens on a weekly basis. And again, I do feel like by week 7, week 8, week 9, we're going to, yeah, exactly. I mean,
the only teams we know for certain are bad are the Panthers and Broncos. That's pretty much it.
Like I feel like we're going to learn more about the season once week 7, week 8, week 9 comes around, because the good teams are going to emerge. The bad teams are going to settle back. We're going to see a lot more parity in the middle, but especially in the early portion of the year, like this is why they call the early portion of the year upset city. Because when these good teams are like trying to like settle in, get used to their groove, get used to their game flow, that's when they're most susceptible to an upset. I mean, heck, the Ravens almost upset the Chiefs on opening night. And I get that that's not a huge upset because the Ravens are a big team, but I mean, the Ravens are 0-2 right now.
Yeah, which is nuts. And they were close to winning both of those games too. And they just swung in the opposite direction.
And there's either going to be a scenario where both the Cowboys and the Ravens after this upcoming week are 1-2, or the Ravens are 0-3.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy. That would be pretty
insane.
crazy. The other thing that I think is like just honestly comedy too is that the 2018 quarterback busts at the top of the draft, Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, just beat the two best teams in the NFC handedly too. And they were the reason that they won too. Like Baker played out of his mind. Like I know we didn't have a lot of offensive plays and we didn't like score a ton, but like when we had the ball, like it was efficient quarterback play. And same goes for the Vikings too.
Yeah, it's hilarious to me when you're actually looking at that, because I said going into the week that you guys basically got your Tampa Bay Jared Goff. Baker Mayfield fucking mopped him in that game. Mopped
Oh,
him.
he did. He
Goff,
played so well, man. And I like Baker Mayfield is the type of quarterback that is precisely the quarterback you want if you're like stuck in the middle of like elite quarterback and like bad quarterback. Like you have fun watching Baker Mayfield.
you have your
so
Brock Purdy.
Yeah, exactly. Like and I think you can win with this quarterback. Like I think the Bucs are a legitimate, could make it like people pretend that we were like terrible last year. It's like, yeah, we had, first of all, Dave Canales looks like a complete train wreck. Like that was who our offensive coordinator was. And Liam Cohen looks like a fucking genius. Like I'm witnessing Bucky Irving and Rashad White running like double pass, jet sweep, reverse plays. Like I've never seen creativity like this in my entire life. Chris Godwin, like cranks the
We
clock
got to
back
address that.
5 years.
Okay.
He looks absolutely outstanding.
It's Cooper Godwin season. Let's just point that right out right now. Like there's no, like the way Godwin is playing, the way he's being utilized in this scheme, it's crazy because he's already had an elite top 3 level, top 5 level season. But I think at this point, you have to consider him at the very minimum, top 15 wide receiver moving forward. At the very minimum. And he's got an opportunity to even be the number 1 wide receiver for Tampa, to be honest.
Yeah, he's like a 92 PFF grade right now. Like he's been outstanding so far. And like he's had 15 targets thrown his way this year, and he's caught all 15 of them. And he has a perfect quarterback rating when targeted.
Yeah, and Danny's saying in chat, Cooper Kupp. Yeah, Cooper Godwin, because that's the role he's playing. He's playing the Kupp role in Cohn's scheme, because obviously Cohn comes from the Rams.
Yeah, and if you're asking about Kupp's injury, it's actually at the top of the show when we talked about the injuries. Yeah. But grade 2 MCL sprain is what Nate is saying about that's probably IR.
That's he's going 6 to 8 weeks.
Great. Yeah, it's probably going to IR for that. Not great. Tampa Bay Bucs are going to be in a lot of offensive-friendly game environments going forward, I would imagine. Getting into some of the other
nose tackle in the league.
Yeah, literally best nose tackle in the league. Our run defense just took a major hit as well. Let's get into some. We've eaten a lot of crow at the top of this video. Let's take some victory laps here. Were we panicking about Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Hell the fuck no, we weren't. There's a reason why they were the top 2 wide receiver prospects in the FSC prospect model. The only 2 comparable wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb and Jamar fucking Chase. And we saw it on display in week 2. Marvin Harrison, I thought he was fat and slow. Guy fucking rips a 70-plus yard touchdown, finishes 4 for 130 and 2. And then we just have Malik Neighbors, not too bad. 64 fucking % target share in his second career NFL game. 18 targets. 64% target share. And then after the game, he's talked about, like, obviously you had a big day. Like, what are your thoughts on your big day? The only thing he says is, well, I could have made that catch at the end. I dropped. That cost us the game. The fact that the guy goes out there, has 18 targets, does what he does, and the first thing he says is, I cost us the game. Like, if you're a Giants fan, you got, like, obviously, I'm a Cowboys fan and I'm giddy because I fucking love Malik Neighbors. If you're a Giants fan, you got your next Odell Beckham Jr. That's my takeaway. And obviously with Malik, with Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. I mean, the guy looked like D-Hop with a jetpack on him.
He looked great. Both of these guys looked absolutely outstanding. And I will issue a formal apology here to AJ because I said that Godwin could be overtaken by Jalen McMillan this year. And he looks outstanding. And that's nothing against Jalen McMillan. He looks good too. But Godwin definitely looks great. Those 2 rookies, it was just a matter of time, especially for Neighbors in week 1. There were signs that he was going to be a good option. I said it on the tier list video, on the matchups that matter video, both Devin Singletary and Malik Neighbors. I said, I feel pretty good about them going forward because the Giants got wiped by the Vikings in week 1 and only scored 6 points. And both Devin Singletary and Malik Neighbors had like fine top 30 performances at the position. I was like, dude, if the Giants look like that, and they're going to, there's going to be games where they're terrible and they can't move the ball on offense. If Neighbors and Singletary are fine in those games and they do what they did when the Giants don't score, like the Giants didn't even score that many points in this game.
He had the same amount of targets as they had points.
Yeah. Like Neighbors is a stud, man. Like he is very clearly already a top 15 to 20 real life receiver in the league.
Dude, I think we could talk about it after a month of the year, and we could say he's already on a top 10 trajectory. I really do.
Yeah, he's a stud, man. He absolutely looks outstanding. And I am gutted, like absolutely gutted, that he went one pick ahead of me in my home league. A one pick. I was at 411 or 410, sorry. He went 409. And I had to take Michael fucking Pittman instead.
Oh, you're in.
And also, because I took Michael Pittman, I drafted Anthony Richardson at the 6'10 when he fell back to me. And I probably don't take Anthony Richardson had that happen. Again, I think Richardson's fine going forward, but I drafted Pittman. I was like, it's a good projection. I feel safe about him. And he kind of looks like Terry McLaurin looks like right now, which is that he doesn't really fit in the offense. And I mean, I fear it could get worse once Josh Downs is back next week, where Mitchell and Pierce and Pittman and Downs are all just rotating in as like weekly flex plays or whatever. And, yeah, Pittman not looking great so far. I would not recommend that you buy low on him. And I have Pittman. Like I would love to just cope and say that he's a great buy low candidate right now, but he's not.
For sure. By the way, I'm just looking at D-Bell's team in your league, and it's
disgusting.
It's unbelievable.
It's disgusting.
What's crazy, so like again, like spoiler, if you guys don't know the context, like to give him an upper edge, I help him with his draft. And the one pick he overruled on is like, no, I need Kamara on my team. And I'm like, okay, if you want him, like, go ahead, get your guy. Like I said, I'm eating crow on that. The fact that he has that team that he does, for context, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Smith, Rashid Rice, Alvin Kamara, JSN.
Breece Hall is not on his team. He's traded me CeeDee Lamb, remember?
CeeDee Lamb, my fault. And you got JSN, right? So regardless, CeeDee Lamb, Kyron Williams, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Smith, Rashid Rice, Alvin Kamara, Deontay Johnson laid on. Even some upside on his bench, like Chandler showed out today. Like his team's fucking cooking. Now, obviously, I'm gassing you up. If you're watching this right now, D-Bell, comment down below. But I had to give you the proper gas because I do feel vindicated.
Yeah, well, I mean, you alluded to JSN. I kind of want to talk about the Seahawks passing game because it looked pretty good against the Patriots. Patriots not an easy pass defense to go up against. We saw the Bengals look like a complete and utter, warm piece of donkey ass against them last week. So DK Metcalf and JSN combining for 29 targets between the two of them, JSN having 16 of them and DK having 13 of them. And of course, the long touchdown, even despite that Christian Gonzalez shadow matchup that he was going up against. So, I mean, this is what I want to see in Seattle going forward. I want to see this every single week. I want to see DK getting a huge big play. I want to see JSN moving the chains. This is exactly how the Seahawks offense should look. And I was worried it was going to take 4 or 5 games for it to look like this because it's a new offensive coordinator, new coaching staff, that kind of thing. I'm glad it only took one game for them to figure that out.
Who would have thought? I mean, we went into the entire offseason. How did we say this Seahawks passing attack would go? Obviously, week 1 didn't look the greatest. How did we say it was going to go? Ryan Grubb coming in. We're going to see more deep vertical shots, which is exactly what we saw with DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf was going to be that third-level threat monster player. Who was going to soak up the underneath targets would be JSN. That is exactly what happened in week 2. Everybody was like, oh, what about Tyler Lockett? Tyler Lockett's been a declining player. Tyler Lockett had a 1.61 yards per run last year. That's why we were targeting JSN. That's why we were targeting DK Metcalf. I feel great betting on my Seahawks bags.
Yeah, no, and I think in the backfield, obviously, Zach Charbonnet had a great game in relief of Kenneth Walker, got great usage too. So that's good news. If you guys have Zach Charbonnet like I do in the Flock League, it's possible you're going to get 1 more, maybe 2 more games out of Zach Charbonnet as the lead back because Walker's injury, according to a lot of the fantasy docs, is about a 1 to 3 week kind of injury that he's dealing with. And he didn't practice at all last week. So a lot of them have mentioned that like what he does on Wednesday will be pretty crucial for Kenneth Walker. But yeah, the Seahawks in general, I think it's kind of just like stock up on what I think about them. I think they had a good performance against a really rough defense, and they have some easier matchups coming up too.
For sure. By the way, all super chats we'll handle at the end, so I appreciate that, Troy. We will be handling it at the end of live stream, along with the other few that we got. Yeah, I mean, good signs for the Seahawks. Obviously, if you
Sharp's 95% of the snaps, by the way. I just wanted to look up exactly what his workload was. 78% of the carries, 77% of the routes, 95% of the snaps, and all of the long down and distance 2-minute drill work. We've said this about Charbonnet before. If Walker's ever out, he's going to be a bigger workload than even Walker has. And same goes in the inverse, probably. I would imagine that Walker would have a big workload if Charbonnet was ever out.
By the way, I have to reference this. Over 600 total people watching. Appreciate you guys. 438 right now in the YouTube live stream as well. 49 likes. So if you guys are watching, again, 439 of you on YouTube, only 49 likes. Let's prop that up. I want to see at least triple digits. So if you guys are watching, hit that like button. Again, we will be live for at least an hour or so today. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Yeah, Seahawks passing game we are betting on. The one thing we're not betting on in terms of the passing game right now is how the rookie quarterbacks are looking, because I mean, we'll just go through it. The 3 quarterbacks that are starting right now, Caleb Williams, 23 for 37, 174 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Couple ill-advised balls on the boundary.
Looked worse than that, too.
DBs. Yeah, he looked, he had a rough one. Let's just say that. Now, it's funny because we just talked about the Seahawks passing a game. Spoiler alert, the Bears' new offensive coordinator was the reason why the Seahawks passing game kind of floundered last year, Shane Waldron. It's looking like he's having the same effect right now in Chicago.
They should literally can him already. Like, I'm worried that Caleb Williams might already be in danger of having a lost rookie season that me and you are talking about for 6 months this offseason because he doesn't have Shane Waldron anymore. If it's not working, they should literally get rid of it ASAP. Like, honestly, I think Shane Waldron's terrible. It's very telling that JSN had the comments that he had about him after the season last year. And I mean, it doesn't help that his receivers are banged up. Odunze's a rookie. He's dealing with a knee injury.
5 targets in the game.
Yeah, he did. Keenan Allen, missed the game with plantar fasciitis. DJ Moore looked pissed, like visually pissed at the game environment and how the plays were being called and things of that nature. Can we so we always talk about, let's get DJ Moore a quarterback, right? Like, we've been wanting a quarterback for DJ Moore, but he also has had terrible play calling minus the 1 year that Joe Brady was with the Panthers in 2020.
Hear me out. Again, this is probably more so a 2025 thing. Who knows? Maybe the offense takes off the rest of the year. Maybe they figure it out. But regardless, even if they have a bad year, Clint Kubiak needs to be the next head coach for the Chicago Bears.
That would be awesome. But for what it's worth, though, like, Eberflus's defense is doing a really good job. It's just the offensive.
It's a quarterback league.
He can't He can't get it right.
Your biggest investment is in that quarterback. If Kubiak wants that head coaching job, sorry, Eberflus, like, you're running a great defense. Doesn't matter. I need Kubiak because I need to develop Caleb.
There's going to be a lot of hot offensive coordinator names other than Kubiak, too. I mean, Petzig in Arizona is doing a great job. Ben Johnson's doing a great job, obviously, with Detroit. Cohen in Tampa Bay potentially has a chance to get a head coaching job after this. Caleb has looked like a rookie quarterback, and that's putting it nicely so far.
And at least he's making like the rookie quarterback mistakes you want him to make, because he's at least going through his progressions. He is taking hits, which you don't want to see, but he's at least sitting in the pocket trying to make plays through structure. The problem is the structure of Waldron's offense just is not there. It's not it, straight up.
Yeah,
it's
and
not it.
The nice thing and the reason for optimism on really any young quarterback, because Bo Nix didn't have a great game either. Jaden Daniels didn't really have that great of a game aside from what he does on the ground. And if we want to even extend this to like Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, who both haven't been good either, at least from a like consistency down to down. Of course, Richardson's had some big plays, and Will Levis had the great throw to Calvin Ridley. All these young quarterbacks, like, if you look back at like what CJ Stroud did the first 2 weeks of the last season, you probably wouldn't have been super excited about CJ Stroud either. By week 5 to Halloween-ish area is when we should start seeing strides from Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. If we're not seeing them at that point in time, then it's definitely time to be worried about them.
For sure. And then, I mean, the last one we have to mention, I mean, Bo Nix, this is what I was referencing at the top. I watched a good amount of this game because I had the Steelers defense in the flock league, which, again, we'll talk about again in a second.
Our call.
I looked at it. I'm like, low implied game. Steelers road favorites. Steelers defense can get after the quarterback. Bo Nix didn't look good in week 1, and they ended up, I believe, actually being the number 1 defense on the week. So shout out there. I believe, I forget, I think it was Car Chisel in the comments of the Flock League asking who I was playing this week for Sunday, because obviously my defense, I had the Bears last week. So I'm like known as like the kicker and defense guru at this point.
Can we take a victory lap as a channel right now that you and I are just dominating the special teams? Because Kanye Fairbairn had 20 points this week, and he had 15.
Aubrey had 17 as well.
And I had Carolina. I had Chargers versus Carolina defense as well, and they had like 13 points as well. Like, so I mean, you and I like are collectively just getting 30 points from our special teams every single week.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, they wanted to introduce kickers and defenses. They should have
They're just raising casuals, apparently. Like, me and you are like, I'm just going to pick on the Broncos and Panthers. That seems like a good strategy.
The thing I've noticed, again, maybe in your league, guys specifically, kickers are going to go high and you would want to fade the position. I get it at that point. But in an expert league where nobody wants to take a kicker prior to the last 2 rounds, going up in the 3rd last round and getting a guy like Aubrey, getting a guy like Fairbairn, if you're contextualizing it and they're giving you 15 plus points per week, you're getting an RB1 for free.
Well, I got Fairbairn in the final round of the draft.
I got Aubrey in the 2nd or 3rd last round.
Yeah, like I waited like people always do in expert leagues, and I got Fairbairn like with I wanted
Yep.
Butker actually because I had Kelce and Mahomes, and I wanted just onslaught the Chiefs offense. But
Yeah.
the strategy is quite simple at kicker. It's like just get a really good offense as kicker, especially it's a double bonus point if that guy's a good kicker himself. And Aubrey and Fairbairn are two of the best 5 kickers in the league.
Especially when his head coach is D'Amico Ryans, who, despite having C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, all those goats on the outside,
Kind of
refuses to go for it
conservative.
on 4th and 2.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of teams do that though when they have great kickers. Like the Ravens never go for 4th and 3s from the 42-yard line because they have Justin Tucker. Like it's the same exact situation. So I'll let you, speaking while we're talking about the Texans, let's talk about Nico Collins because Carlos mentions it. Nico's a freaking superstar. Danny, take a bow. And yeah, he's great. We don't need to talk too in depth about the graphics. I know you wrote down here. We're not grabbing the graphics here. Like we all have seen them 68 times.
What graphics are you referring to?
Like the reception perception. We all know that he was the dominant separator last year.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys have known the whole spiel about Nico Collins. I think this exact phrase, Nico Collins is a 6'4" ball winner that is a better separator than people expect. I think I've used that phrase probably like 20 times this offseason, but it's been true every single time I've said it, and it's been true on Sunday night because the guy looked like prime Andre Johnson. Like, that is what he reminds me of. He's so fucking physical. He's so quick out of his breaks. He can run routes. In breakers, how are you going to stop a 6'4", 220-pound route runner on an in breaker in a fucking Texans offense run by Bobby Sloan?
You don't. The answer is nobody can right now.
Dude, like, tell me this guy isn't a top 5 wide receiver in the league right now.
No, he's definitely playing like a top 5 receiver in the league, especially when you contextualize the fact that, like, we knew this. Like I remember Sam Sherman and Davis Maddock and Pat Kerrane, they do the ship chasing show. It's a great show. They do ADP chasing every week during the off season. They're doing it during the season as well. And they had like their, maybe I'm crazy, but like kind of takes at the very end of the off season. And Sam Sherman was like, we might be looking at the next Julio Jones with Nico Collins, is what he says. Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't know how this guy's not going at the 1-2 turn at the very least. And I don't know how that's not an industry standard take across the board.
I had him at 14th overall coming into the year, and I'm kicking myself because I think that was too low. That is how I am. I am one of the, Sherman as well. Shout out Sam. Great work that he does. I feel like me, him, and like Jacob Sanderson have been fucking starting the Nico Collins hive. Again, go blue, Michigan boy himself. He was actually on my sleepers video last year. If you guys want to go fact check it out as well,
he was.
We'll take that. I feel great, man. He looks so damn good attached to this offense. It is from the broadcast, MT. I get that, but I just think it is the perfect comp for what we could expect going forward. If you told me that this guy had 1,600 yards and 13 touchdowns this year, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. That is my expectation the rest of the season, that he is a legitimate 100+ yard per game, touchdown per game wide receiver, because that is how talented he is. 28% target share, competing for targets with Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Schultz, Joe Mixon, who's been getting targets out of the backfield. Like, despite all of that target competition, and that was the one thing people said about me is, how can you be so high on Nico Collins? There's so many Texas receivers. They're going to disperse the ball around. Yeah, but the cream rises to the top. The true alpha is the one who commands 28% of the targets.
Yeah, well, and I said the same thing about Ayuk, and it hasn't materialized yet. But it actually looks better for Ayuk now because there's guys that are banged up in his offense. But with those two guys, you were just supposed to close your eyes and just hope for the best. Just draft the elite player on the elite offense and just hope that they're going to get the targets because they've proven that they can win the targets in target competition situations. And Flett did mention here, not feeling great about our Collins trade, Bush. So for those of you guys that were following us in the Dynasty offseason, for the 102 in our rookie draft, Flett traded up from 106, gave me what became Rome Odunze plus Nico Collins plus a second rounder in 2024. I didn't actually see who I ended up picking with that, but I think it was like Trey Benson or somebody like that. And he got Marvin Harrison Jr. So obviously Harrison's great. He's an elite Dynasty asset. We all want him, but I got Nico Collins, Rome Odunze, and like a good second round asset. I don't remember who I picked with that pick, but
if you're going to talk about a trade, I have to talk about this trade. The amount of fucking hate I got, the amount of comments I got, this guy ain't no expert. I'm not taking any of this guy's advice seriously. Who the fuck is Danny? Take the bandana off. Oh, I got to talk to him right now. Anybody watching that has seen the Flock League vlog, has gone through the Flock League comments. Trust me, I have like about 15 screenshots. I am ready to update in the next vlog. All of you guys can eat fucking crow. If I'm eating crow on Alvin Kamara, I'm eating crow on Braylon Allen. You guys are eating crow on Nico Collins. Now, obviously, if you guys are drafting him with me, appreciate you guys. But the amount of fucking hate I got for trading away Jalen Waddle and Ramondre Stevenson for Nico Collins,
for what it's worth, has looked really
he's
good.
He's been great. But that's the problem is people thought like, oh, you gave up Stevenson. That's awesome. Or that's awful. Like you're a clown. You're a buffoon. You're an absolute taco. That is not why I did the deal. I did not go into the deal thinking that Benson was going to be better than Stevenson. I did the deal because I wanted Nico fucking Collins on my team. But people are too brain dead to fucking realize that. They see Stevenson, they see another solid wide receiver in Waddle, they make assumptions right away. Well, guess what? Jalen Waddle good. He ain't wide receiver 2 in fantasy across 2 weeks good. I'm going to talk my shit because Nico Collins is going to finish as a top 5 wide receiver. And straight up, I mean, Mason drafted him in the second round. I would take him over his fucking first round pick. Call it right now. I would take Nico Collins over Jamar Chase rest of the season. I wouldn't blink twice.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's an outrageous take. And my first round pick, Garrett Wilson, I'd probably take Nico Collins over him too. So
flip that.
Yeah, no, it is pretty crazy how good Collins ended up materializing. And I'm not going to complain. I took Devon Achane over Nico Collins, and he's been elite too. But
hey, those are my guys too. We feel good.
One thing I am pissed about though is that I drafted in my home league. I drafted Drake London over Nico Collins, and that one maybe it'll materialize better for me today, and Kirk Cousins will look good. I guess we've only still seen one game out of Drake London, but I'm regretting not taking Nico Collins with that selection. Let's just put that on the market right now.
Dude, I mean, I got him in the FSC listener league. I got him. I'm just so grateful. I have 25% Nico Collins right now, or over 20% at the very minimum in Best Ball Mania. Yeah, when he was going at the 2-3 turn, that was the most mispriced freaking player I've ever seen. Like Sam said, I don't understand.
It was feeding families. It was literally feeding families. Like 2-3 turn Nico Collins was one of the more ridiculous narrative. Because like the other thing too is like if Diggs was never traded for, that's where we would have been drafting him. We would have drafted him at the 1-2 turn. Everybody knows that. If Diggs was never added to the Texans, that's what would have happened. But when you're out on the field and you're dropping back and you're CJ Stroud, who are you throwing the ball to? It's the guy who's open. And if Nico Collins is open all the time, it doesn't matter if other players are good on his offense. It doesn't matter. Whoever gets open consistently and whoever the offense is scheming up plays for, which the Texans are clearly doing for Nico Collins, then they're going to get the ball. Target competition is one of the most overrated, easily exploitable things in fantasy football. The best players get the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple to me when you have a guy of that stature, the guy of that separation ability, the guy of that target commanding ability working in a top 5 projected offense with a top 5 to 8 projected quarterback that CJ Stroud is. It was a no-brainer all offseason. I felt almost like I mean, you also were on it too. So like, good thing, like you were on Nico Collins, but I felt like the people that were anti Nico Collins, like, you know how many fucking times, especially even last week, people tried to victory lap. I had comments victory lap and see, I told you, Stephon Diggs is the wide receiver 1, huh? 6 catches, 33 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. It's like people were victory lapping because I said Nico Collins is the one going into the week. I'm like, yeah, he is the wide receiver 1. Do you pay attention to usage, or do you look at 2 touchdowns on the box score as your reasoning?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, before Danny has an aneurysm, let's talk about also, by the way, if you guys are curious about the Flock League, if you guys are curious about it, that is the channel. Me and Danny are in the league. Mason's in the league. The Domain guys are in the league. Salvetri's in the league. And the Land guys from Australia are in the league. The content we're putting out there is, like, I'm not even kidding. It's so YouTube. Fun. It's so fun to make. Like, we are basically reality TV versioning a fantasy football league. And our editor's doing a killer job, a fucking killer job of this stuff. And I have some absolutely hilarious clips coming for week 2. Every Tuesday, we drop the new week vlog where we recap the week. If a big trade goes down, everybody drops what they're doing, and we all start recording reactions to the trades. It's a ton of fun, man. You guys definitely want to be following along over there. Speaking of which,
one more thing. If you guys are seeing this graphic on the screen right now, if you want to go comment on that video about that trade and see what the exact trade was, I mean, I talked about what the trade was, but if you want to go comment on that video, the second video there, Flock League goes crazy after this trade. That was the Nico Collins and Jalen Waddle trade. Obviously, you see it on the thumbnail there. Go and have a good time reading at some of the comments that I got. People legit throwing personal insults, talking about, oh, this bandana guy's clueless. Does he have CTE? Like, it is a ton of fun looking back with revisionist view.
Yeah, oh, it's fine. The trade there, horrible trade ruins Mason's team, is the one that I actually made with Mason, where Hollywood Brown, after I traded him to Mason, with like in 2 days, he was out for the season, which is kind of funny to me. But anyways, speaking of the Flock League, there's 2 players that I drafted in the 3rd and the 4th round in the Flock League that are disappointing your fantasy teams because they combined for 22 combined points. And I would say they're probably the premier stack in fantasy football, or at least they have been for the last 5 to 7 years on this team. Dude, what the hell's going on with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce's fantasy production right now? Like, here's what's going on. I'll tell you guys. You see the pass attempts. This is Patrick Mahomes' career. Pass attempts per game since he took over the starting job have been well over 35 at the very least, and if not over 37, 38. He has passed the ball 26 and a half times on average through the first 2 games of the season. Again, maybe you're calling me a copium. Maybe you're saying that I'm being way too non-reactionary to this, but I don't know about you, but I think the best quarterback in the league is probably going to be fine and still an elite fantasy quarterback going forward. Kelce, I'm definitely a little bit more concerned with because he's older and, that kind of thing. But I think if the pass attempts and the offensive production through the air goes up for Patrick Mahomes, it will go up for Travis Kelce as well. So spoiler alert, the trade targets video this week is probably going to feature both of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big time spoiler. It's still Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, but if people are worried about it, also worth noting, there was a 41-yard catch and run that literally got called back by a penalty by Travis Kelce. Like, and people are concerned, they view the stat line, think, oh, Travis Kelce can't move anymore. Yeah, he had a 41-yard catch and run that didn't count on the stat line.
Again, I'm not discounting that Travis Kelce is probably not going to lap the field at tight end and be the best tight end in fantasy. Like, people are saying Kelce is washed. Like, that is precisely why I'm buying him, because there's he looks the same as he did last year to me. And he was the tight end 1 in fantasy yet again. So he can be older and not the same player that he was 5 years ago. But to me, he is still very clearly a very good tight end option to have. And you can buy him for nothing right now.
Also, I'll reiterate as well. Again, appreciate all the supers. We will touch them at the end. I noticed there was a couple comments asking us if we're going to get into the trades. Right. Don't worry. We will cover them. Just it will be at the end, unfortunately, because we want to make sure we get into every single topic that we have laid out here.
Okay. We have one more takeaway, and I'm just going to get like some temperature gauge again, because we did this last week, and I think it's a good exercise. Are you scared about these offenses? 10 being very scared, 1 being not that scared. And we'll just give a quick minimal analysis thing on these guys. So let's start with the Miami Dolphins. Let's say that Tua is out 4 games at least. How scared are you in the short term for the Dolphins?
7 or 8.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. You just got to downgrade. Are you selling Waddle or Hill if you have?
Well, I'll ask you this. If let's just say it's Huntley or Skylar Thompson. Obviously, there's more elite players on the Miami Dolphins offense compared to the Packers offense. But did you see how the Packers offense operated with Malik Willis?
Yeah, and as a Devon Achane manager, I hope that's how they operate in Miami with that situation. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it as well. I think if you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, your only course of action, honestly, is to weather the storm until Tua is back on the field. I don't think selling either of those 2 guys makes sense, given what you're going to get for them on the open market. Unless we hear some like really positive news about Tua, and then
let me pose this question right now.
What's up?
Obviously, there's the uncertainty right now. You get an offer in your inbox. You have Tyreek Hill. The other person is sending you Nico Collins. Are you accepting? Or are you declining?
I would rather have Tyreek Hill.
I think that's the range. I would rather have Nico.
It's probably precisely the cutoff. But yeah, that is. If I can weather the storm, if I'm 2-0, 1-1, I feel like I can get by. I would rather have Tyreek Hill. If I am desperate, I'm 0-2, and I'm not scoring a lot of points, then I would take Nico Collins.
I'm taking Nico. I'm more maybe I'm more worried about the Tua thing, but I would rather have Nico.
It's close. It's really close. They're probably like top 8 receivers both rest of the season, if not top 6 receivers. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Okay, let's talk about some of these other teams that objectively just don't look good. There's no injury that we're worried about. Jaguars, 1 to 10. How scared?
7.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less scared. I think I'm like a 5 or a 6. I think that they're going to result in some what's happened so far is going to result in some changes, which is that they're going to probably start throwing more, and Kirk and Brian Thomas will be more involved in the offense. Because that's why
Peterson's a very good coach
on offense.
I just don't think Doug Peterson's a very good coach, and the offenses look really bland. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm like a 5 or a 6, is because I'm worried that's a concern as well. But I think that there's going to be some adjustments. I think when Trevor Lawrence is coming out and saying we're a bad football team, I think that's going to be like a squeaky wheel kind of week 3 type of situation.
And actually, I will correct something because I see the next team down is the Bears. If they have similar offensive scheme concerns, I'm more worried about the Bears than I am the Jaguars. So I can't put the Bears at a 9 or a 10 because I think that's too much. Because I obviously still rookie quarterback, they could still very well get better, especially when Rome Odunze's healthier. But if the Jaguars, like the Jaguars, have to be a little bit further down than the Bears, in my opinion.
5 or
so I would agree 5 or 6, and the Bears are 7 or 8.
Yeah, okay. So 7 or 8 for the Bears. I think that we already covered them pretty in depth.
Yep.
Cleveland Browns, how worried are you for them as far as Amari Cooper and Jerome Ford / Nick Chubb once he's back and David Njoku once he's back?
9.
How worried are you to these guys?
9.
You think Watson's that bad, eh?
I think he's cooked.
I think he's cooked, but are you concerned at all that, like, I think if he's as cooked as he's playing right now, there could be a QB change
Is there any single, with Njoku out, is there any single Brown you're starting with top 24 level confidence? Because the answer is no.
Yes.
Top 30
Amari
level
Cooper,
confidence?
I would still be starting.
Top 24 level confidence in Amari.
Top 24 is a little rich. Probably top 30.
That is way too rich. Top 30, I think, is fair. Top 24
top 30,
is too rich.
I still think I'm pretty Amari Cooper has 17 targets in 2 games, and he had a 25% target share in this game.
I get that.
He's one of the better buy lows. So, like, we talked about him last week as one of the bigger buy lows in fantasy. He still is, because I think that the offense is going to improve slightly going forward.
I get that, but confidence.
They have a really easy schedule coming up too, like really easy.
I get that, but confidence probably not the right word for it, because quite frankly, like, yeah, he's commanding targets, but he's not playing well in his own right. Even my Browns buddy who actually covers the team on a weekly basis literally said, like, what the fuck is going on with Amari Cooper? He's been dropping passes that he normally catches with ease. Deshaun Watson, of course, he's broken straight up. Like, I thought maybe he could bounce back, but like, I don't know if it's the shoulder, but a lot of it's even been mental too. Like, obviously, again, the offensive line hasn't been playing the greatest in the first 2 weeks. Don't get me wrong, but
they also they haven't had their offensive tackles healthy. Jedrick Wills didn't play again. Jack Conklin played probably injured. If Jedrick Wills is back, I would be interested to see how the Browns offense looks against. Let me pull up the schedule. I believe it's really easy. Cleveland Browns schedule. They have like 3 or 4. Like, they play the Giants this week, the Raiders, and then the Commanders. Those are 3 very winnable, very bad defenses. So
yeah, for sure,
I think there's a chance that they could.
I think the other teams are saying that about the Browns offense, though.
Oh, I'm sure they are. But to me, I think Amari Cooper is such a great buy low right now because he seems like the type of guy you could quickly profit off of if he has 2 or 3 good games the next 3 weeks against really easy defenses, and then you could flip him for Chris Olave or Drake London or whatever, some guy that you want to go after that's having some down production. For me, I think Cooper is still the one guy that I'm holding on to, as I still believe in Cooper and Njoku once he's back on the field too.
For sure. I mean, we'll just go through the last few because I think they're like, as we get into it, the scared level, the concern level is going to go down. I'm assuming Colts and Jets, you're probably going to be anywhere between a 2 and a 4.
I would say 4 for both of them. I'm scared for the short term for both teams. I think that it's going to take time for both because Richardson is inexperienced. The scheme is good. Josh Downs should be back this week, which will help the passing game a little bit. But I am worried that the quarterback is going to complete 50% of his passes every single game. Like, he just doesn't look like an accurate quarterback at all.
I will say Pittman has not been playing up to par in his own right. I think Downs coming back is going to add a lot more layups to this offense because obviously Josh Downs working underneath.
He needs a chain mover bad.
He does. Like, if Anthony Richardson gets a chain mover and he can rely upon Josh Downs to work that 1 to 10 yard area of the field, AD Mitchell is now your designated 3rd level threat. Which again,
instead of Pierce, Pierce is playing well.
Pierce is playing well. I mean,
if Mitchell's playing that role, it's better.
Well, 100%. It just sucked too because obviously Mitchell had a couple plays where he made some bad drops as well. But like, it's sooner rather than later for me that Averich and AD Mitchell are going to connect. Like, it's a ticking time bomb at this point that it's going to happen. So for me, I think
storm with Richardson too. Like, if you have Anthony Richardson, like I do in my home league, unfortunately, he has to be in your lineup every single week because he is either going to drop 30 points or he's going to drop 6. It's just going to happen. Just how Anthony Richardson is.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm assuming 49ers, Cowboys, Bengals, you're at like a 0 to 1.
Yeah, I'm not real. I'm concerned about the Bengals still a little bit. But yeah, the Jets too. I think it's going to take time, just like the Colts. I think the new quarterback and the offensive scheme's not really being called very well right now. But all of those teams, I feel pretty confident. Like Jets specifically on Garrett Wilson's side of things, I feel like it's only a matter of time before the targets start to connect.
Am I still lagging for you, by the way?
You're lagging a little bit. Your video is kind of blurry, but you should be okay. So let's go through a couple dynasty trades as we often do
Okay.
on these, and then we'll rip through some waiver ads as well, some early waiver ads. Of course, what's up?
I didn't hear what you said. So for the Niners, the Cowboys, the Bengals are the one you're concerned most with.
Yeah, I'm concerned for the Cowboys. Like the nice thing about the Cowboys is that the only player we care about for fantasy is CeeDee Lamb, realistically, and Prescott
and Dak. Yeah,
I'm starting to think that Dak is blending into the other quarterbacks that are that are having good performances. I'm more worried about him than anybody in the offense, just as far as his fantasy production is concerned. But Lamb is frankly the only guy that really matters in the offense.
See, I'll disagree because I watched both the games. The first game, obviously, the game script. He had literally 85% of his passing production, 90% of it in the first half. So not concerned there. Yesterday's game, it was almost the inverse of the game script where they were down so much. They were getting to the red zone constantly, but because the Saints knew that they just weren't going to run the football when they're in the red zone, they had to pass the ball, given the fact that they were down 11 plus points throughout the entirety of the game. I mean, at one point, I believe it was 21-6 that they were up. So
yeah, no, they were getting trounced. I guess my thing with Dak is that I'm just a little bit, I'm viewing that like back end QB1 range as like a little bit more fluid than I thought it was going to be. Like I really thought that Dak and Jordan Love and Burrow and those guys were going to like really separate themselves as a tier above the Tuas and the Purdy's and the Goffs and the Mayfields and the Genos and those type of guys. And I think that it's going to be relatively matchup driven for a lot of those guys.
Well, that's where I still think Dak will, because again, like we got the exact usage we wanted to see. The first interception, by the way, people will say, "Oh, 2 interceptions." The first interception, Jalen Brooks fucking fell on his route. Second one, you're playing against a robber, so basically, Tyrann Mathieu disguising it as a too high. So against too high, obviously, if you guys follow football, you'll know that your in breakers are your money route. When you're running an in breaker against too high, that's where you want to go as a quarterback. So he knows that CeeDee Lamb's running an in breaker. Tyrann Mathieu running a robber just makes a fucking great play. Jobs right underneath of it. Obviously, they have the corner on the outside shade of CeeDee Lamb. They have Tyrann Mathieu cutting underneath. Ends up being an interception. And we saw the usage. I mean, 39 passing attempts, 290 passing yards. And I would honestly say, like, you feel more optimistic about the overall depth of the offense potentially because Schoonmaker had a decent game. Dowdle out of the backfield showed well. But the main one, obviously, of course, Tolbert was able to make some plays. So if Cooks comes fully healthy, I still think he's a little bit banged up from last week. And of course, Jake Ferguson comes fully healthy in this offense. I actually feel more comfortable about the supporting cast moving forward than I did coming into the year.
Yeah, I don't think actually disagree with that take at all. I think that the supporting cast looks a little bit better than I thought. I think
the other guys look good too. That's why you're saying that. Like, like the Bakers of the world, the offense look good.
Where I'm at with it. Anyways, let's talk about some dynasty trades here because we want to rattle through a couple of these and then we'll go through some early look at the waivers. I, of course, will have you guys covered with my top 10 waiver ads tomorrow morning, sharp early, so that you guys are ready to set your waivers. And also, too, I'll cover those on my TikTok as well. Let's talk about Ryan Michaels' trade here. We farm these out to Twitter every single Monday morning. So if you guys want to submit a dynasty trade, obviously we like to talk about timely players who are in the news and guys that are potentially we want to gauge their market value. And I think Jordan Mason fits the bill for one of those guys because he's obviously a very popular guy in dynasty right now. Superflex 12 team PPR, start 11, 3 wide receiver. Retooling team, 1 season tank. The other manager has CMC and is contending. Wanted a second for Mason, but he didn't have any. So I did my best to tier up. And he said, hoping Olave benefits from this offensive surge under Clint Kubiak. What do you think of this trade?
You're not competing. You sell off Mason's point production, which you didn't even want anyways, like you said. And you go out and get a potential top 12 overall wide receiver in Chris Olave versus Michael Pittman. I just simply think from a talent perspective, Olave completely clears Pittman, is now in a situation in the Saints offense where he can really, really unlock his full potential because we're seeing Derek Carr air it out down the field. We're seeing the play action in breakers, the play action post shots. Obviously, Rashid Shaheed's value's gone up, but like Chris Olave moving forward, I mean, he made some absolute fucking absurd catches against the Cowboys too. The thing with the Saints is they only threw the ball 13 times, but it went for 246 yards against the Cowboys, dude. Like their offense is just a fucking efficient unit. With Chris Olave, like you might be getting Brandon Ayuk with no target competition.
Yeah, I mean, Shaheed looks good.
Other than Shaheed,
a 50-yard touchdown every single game like he has so far through 2 weeks.
Correction. Let me not disrespect Shaheed. You're getting less target competition than George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think if you guys are looking to sell Mason, Mason is the guy that I wanted to talk about in this trade because people are probably wondering what to do with Mason, especially if you guys ran a 0 RB or a rebuilding team and you just grabbed Mason in the 18th round of your startup. What gets Mason off of your team right now? If you're a rebuilder, would you sell him for a second? Or you want more than that?
I would have to be an early to mid second.
I agree. I think one random second round pick is not enough for Jordan Mason right now. He's getting too much production for him to just go for a second round pick. Like second round pick is what you sell like AJ Dillon for when Josh Jacobs misses 5 games.
For sure. Sorry, Troy, we've said it multiple times. So we mentioned at the top of the stream, again, apologies if you didn't know, but we addressed the supers at the end of the stream.
Yeah, we do. Apologies again. Don't super us on the Monday morning stream.
Yeah.
Like, I'll literally tell you guys, save your money. Don't super us on the Monday morning stream. Like if you want to super us and get a question answered, do it on the late stream. But we will cover them in about 15 minutes after we're done covering the waiver stuff. But yeah, Mason was one guy I definitely wanted to talk about there because I think he's a popular guy for people in Dynasty right now. Next trade here is from Hopkey, full PPR, super flex, tight end premium, 2 flex besides the super. So it's obviously a very big starting lineup. And then he ends up getting AD Mitchell, Brian Robinson. What is this? 2 1s and a second rounder and a third. And he sells off Breece Hall, Rashid Shaheed, and 2/3 here. So, I mean, Breece and for the 2 1s and the 2 is probably about fair value, or the 2 1s and AD Mitchell for Breece is probably about fair value, I would say.
I like give me your side.
Great move.
Especially too knowing, again, I don't know the context. You didn't say where those picks will figure, but let's just assume they're mid to late if the guy's going out and buying Breece Hall. Even in a mid to late projection, like as much as I love Breece, again, he is a top 2 running back for me in Dynasty, clearly. You're basically looking at it, even if you just had the 2 first for him. At the 8th overall pick this year, you might be able to get like an Omarion Hampton or an Ollie Gordon, which to be fair, Ollie Gordon hasn't.
I think Breece is worth more than 2 firsts. To be
honest. But that's fair. But like when you're contextualizing this class in particular, you can supplement your running back value in a guy that as soon as they're drafted, if they get top 50 draft capital, whether it's Omarion Hampton, whether it's Quinshon Judkins, whether it's Ollie Gordon, whether it's one of those backs, as soon as they get top 50 draft capital, they're going to be valued as a top 5 to 6 dynasty running back. And then at that point, it's basically a top 5 to 6 running back plus a first round pick for a top 2 running back.
Yeah, no, exactly. Again, I think given Breece's production value and the fact that you have to take a little bit of a risk with rookies and that kind of thing, I would want 2 1s and a 2 for Breece Hall if I was selling him. And ideally, I would like one of those ones to potentially have a chance to be early, maybe the 26 one because the guy's got a really aging team or something like that is maybe how you play that. But yeah, getting Mitchell and Robinson and another third there is great. Like, I mean, Brian Robinson versus Shaheed, I think is probably a wash in Dynasty, give or take. Both of those guys are solid production flex options. And then AD Mitchell is worth what in Dynasty? He's worth an early second rounder, probably, give or take.
Yeah, about
maybe
that.
A late first if you're really high on him.
Yeah, early second, I would say, is about the value there. Sorry, I was just looking at this next deal because this is a fucking heat seeker from Sully. Heat seeker. I got to ask you at this point. We obviously have been talking about Jefferson, Chase, Lamb as being tier of their own Dynasty wide receivers. How close is Nico Collins to that at this point, knowing that he's a 25-year-old wide receiver attached at least for the next 3 years to CJ Stroud? Because I honestly, like, I'm looking at this right now. Tell me why Nico Collins isn't at least an early second round startup pick.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you this. If you were doing Nico for Jefferson straight, how much would you do Nico in a late projected first for Justin Jefferson if you had Nico Collins?
Nico.
You'd rather have Nico in the first?
Yeah.
So then the answer is it's Nico and a 2 or Nico and 2 2s or Nico and a 2 and a 3, give or take. For Jefferson is the difference in value. And I mean, the difference between Achane and McConkey is pretty large. Like Achane's a top 5 to 3 potentially dynasty running back. So yeah.
For the record, that is way more pro Collins than it is anti Jefferson. I'm not anti Jefferson. I understand. I've talked about him potentially being the best wide receiver of all time statistically. But Nico Collins right now is averaging over 20 PPR points per game. I understand it's only 2 games in, but he only has 1 touchdown to do that. He has a 28% target share from CJ fucking Stroud. The guy literally looks like he's going to be the next Hall of Fame wide receiver. And again, people might think, well, that's crazy to say. The guy had 1,300 yards last year on 108 targets, dude.
He averaged over 3 yards per route run.
If he has, because it's very real now. Again, 108 targets last year, he was that efficient. What happens if that 108 targets turns into 150 targets, dude?
Well, let's go through it right now because this will be fun. How many wide receivers are we taking over Nico Collins in Dynasty? Are you taking all three of the previous top
4.
3, Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, over Nico Collins? Are you taking Chase? I guess would be the one that you might not. I would still take Chase.
I think we need to start having conversations.
Yeah. Okay. So let's assume those are there. I'm assuming you're still taking Marvin Harrison over Nico Collins in Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, so Nico's 5.
You're taking him over St. Brown.
Yeah.
I would not. I would take Harrison and St. Brown over him.
At the very minimum, he's top 6 then, because as much as I love Garrett Wilson, you're taking him over
Garrett Wilson, Neighbors, Puka Nacua, AJ Brown is the next area we're talking about. So you're saying Nico is above those guys?
I think you can make the argument for him being anywhere between 3 and 6 is where I'm at with him. Because I think the top 2 are CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson.
Do you think you can make the argument to take Garrett Wilson or Malik Neighbors or Puka Nacua over him?
Like, if you're a rebuilding team, maybe you want to get Neighbors plus, but straight up, I think at this point, I would take Nico over him.
Yeah, I don't think that's an outrage.
So good, man.
I personally would still take Garrett Wilson and Malik Neighbors over Nico Collins, personally. But that, give me 2 or 3 more weeks of Garrett Wilson not looking like he's going to take a step this year.
I love Garrett.
My opinion on that.
Don't get me wrong. I love Garrett. Like, that's not anti. I think Nico Collins is potentially a top 5 real life talent. I think there's a conversation to be had if he's better than Jamar Chase. And in fact, at this point, I'm kind of leaning that way. What does Jamar Chase bring other than just pure downfield ability? Which actually, even so,
Nico brings that too.
That's right. I mean, I guess you could say 70+ yard touch, which Nico brings, but I guess Jamar Chase is the next level.
The yards after catch element, probably. I guess
that's what I'm talking about. The yak ability, the big play. But like I said, Nico Collins is I would say he's a better ball winner. As good as Chase is, Nico Collins is a better ball winner. Nico Collins is the better route runner, the better separator, and he's in a better potential offense. Like, as good as the Bengals is, as good as the Bengals are, we trust the Texans offense more than we do the Bengals moving forward quite easily.
Yeah, and I think the major distinction is who's calling the plays in Houston versus who's calling the plays in Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
We trust Bobby Slowick over I don't trust Zach Taylor over 90% of the offensive coordinators in the league. There's only a couple of teams that have worse offensive coordinators than Zach Taylor, to be honest.
We also haven't talked about the fact that in this deal, as much as I like McConkey, getting Devon Achane, why isn't Devon Achane the consensus RB3, RB4 in Dynasty right now? Him and Jahmyr
I would rather have Devon Achane than Jahmyr Gibbs in Dynasty.
I don't think that. I don't even think that's a hot take. I think that should be the sentiment at this point.
It should be. They were close coming into the year, and Gibbs is clearly still in a split backfield, and Achane isn't. Yeah, right now at least. And they were very close coming into the season. So you could definitely make the argument for Gibbs over Achane still, but I think at the absolute basement level, Achane's RB4 in Dynasty.
For sure. But we'll go into the waivers and then we will touch upon the supers. Again, apologies for those that have been waiting on the supers. This is typically how we do these Monday shows. If you guys want it answered right away, the Monday night live stream is the best way to get those supers across. But again, we will obviously still get to them. It's going to be a longer wait. So again, apologies for that for those who donated.
Yep, for sure. So let's talk about our early look at our top 5 waivers. Again, I will have an entire breakdown of this tomorrow morning. So don't take this at complete face value, but a lot of you guys don't have to submit your waiver claims until Wednesday at 3 a.m. or whatever most people's waivers run anyway. So the early look at the waiver wire, as we kind of talked about at the top with the injury stuff, is to me, I think the very clear best 2 ads on the waiver wire are the Kansas City Chiefs lead running back and the Houston Texans lead running back, whoever you think that is. Because Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, both of them are sub 3% rostered. Isaiah Pacheco, as we talked about, is very likely to be placed on IR. With the injury that he suffered. It's also very likely that he's out for extended time, potentially 10, 15 weeks total, and is only back for the playoffs or something like that. And the Chiefs running backs are an undrafted fullback and a 28, 29-year-old journeyman third down back. It's also possible they bring in somebody. It's possible they trade for somebody. It's possible that they sign a veteran off of the scrap heap. I don't know if Kareem Hunt or something is still out there right now, but he would be maybe somebody that would be interesting. I don't know. How would you handle the Chiefs backfield? Because to me, I think this is the best ad of the week if you can get it, or if you can get it right. If we get a guy that leads this backfield, it's probably the best ad of the week.
I think it's pretty clearly in a half PPR or standard league, Carson Steele, because he did handle the majority of the goal line work. In a PPR, it gets interesting because I do think this is going to be a relatively 50-50 split. The thing that I'm concerned about is with Samaje Perine versus Carson Steele. Typically, you want to say, well, the Kansas City offense, they're going to score a ton of points. The problem is that their pass rate over expectation in the red zone compared to other teams is night and day higher. Like compared to the Rams, compared to the Jets, compared to some of these teams that run the ball in the red zone, the Chiefs don't do that. The Chiefs have their screen passes, their little gimmicky plays, little pop passes. So you can argue that the receiving back may actually be more valuable in this offense than the goal line back, which would lean Samaje Perine's way. I honestly think it's a 50-50
CEH will be
projection.
activated, hopefully. Again, we don't know CEH's situation because
I think it's far more likely he takes Carson's role than he does Samaje's role.
It is, but it is also mental health related. According to the reports, he has PTSD from an incident that he had. So I'm not going to bank on CEH coming in and just being the lead back here, but he's definitely worth adding as well. He's 100. If you can stash a guy for 2 or 3 weeks until he's eligible to come off of PUP or IR, or wherever he was placed on non-football injury list, it's possible that they want to activate him and he's a viable pickup as well. So this backfield is weird, man. I think pick up a guy, don't overspend on it. Don't just look at it and be like, oh my God, Kansas City Chiefs starting running back, gotta blow out my fab. No, like take a cautious approach. Take maybe the cheaper option if you're not sure, and see what happens.
Over under 25% of your fab.
I would not spend 25% of my fab on these guys.
Where are you at on it?
I would spend probably 10 to 15%.
Now, what do you think is going to be the winning bid in your league if you actually want one?
I think it will be 20 to 40% of your fab that wins them in your league, depending on how casual your league is and how much they like running backs. Because again, I think a lot of people don't know. I actually prefer to go after the Texans backfield, just in terms of the short term.
In terms of value, too.
Long term wise, Pacheco's going to be out longer, most likely. But short term production wise, I think that the Texans are better bets.
I would agree with that. I will say, though, again, like if you're in a hero running back build, like for example, in the Flock League, let's just look at my team or we don't have to look at it, but I'll explain it. So I have Breece Hall. Outside of that, I have a lot of projections as my RB2. Alexander Madison, who had the usage in week 1, only gets 4 carries, 1 rushing yard, but bails his day up because he punches one into the end zone. So 6.1, he's not going to be a guy I have in my starting lineup moving forward, knowing that he only had 4 opportunities. And what profile to be the game script he wanted. We saw Amir Abdullah really take his impact in terms of the third down, the receiving snaps that Alexander Madison had in week 1. I have Trey Benson. I have Jalen Wright. I have Rico Dowdle, Chase Brown. Not guys you feel confident in their workloads. I will say Rico, I'm the most optimistic on based off what we saw in week 2. But regardless, if I can go out there and get a running back that could potentially be the lead running back for the Texans or the Chiefs, and funny enough, I actually did get Cam Akers right before Sunday Night Football, so I feel good about that. I ended up dropping Jalen right before the game in case something happened to Mixon. I'm like, I want to make sure I get ahead of the curve. Something happens to Mixon. Now I have Cam Akers, who's potentially one of the bigger waiver ads of the week, which you'll get into in a second.
Yeah, no, I don't know how to handle the Chiefs. I wish I could tell you guys I knew exactly what to do here. I don't. I think that there's a good chance that one of them could be viable. I think there's a good chance that the other could be viable. I think there's a good chance none of them are viable. I think there's a good chance they could trade or sign somebody. Like,
there's a chance they throw the ball 45 times a game.
Yeah. Be cautious with your fab budget is all I would say about the Kansas City Chiefs backfield. Go for median kind of range, whatever you feel comfortable spending on these guys, but don't go overboard, because I don't think this is the waiver ad, because every year there's like a waiver ad, right? Like HN was the guy last year, Kyron was the guy last year, where I was like, if you didn't get them, you were like, why didn't I just bid more? Like you were, you know what I mean? Like you were regretting how little you bid on them. Versus this year, I don't believe that Carson Steele will be the guy that you're like, why didn't I bid more on him? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think he's a fine role-playing running back. Like he's tough. He can finish between the tackles. He can absorb contact well, but you're still looking at a mid 4.7 fullback on the roster. He's listed as a fullback. Again, he got usage between the tackles. We want to see that, but you really feel confident the guy that runs a 4.7 listed as a fullback is actually going to take 3 to 4 receptions per game, 3 to 4 targets per game?
No. And also too, like, I mean, it's bullish for my Kelce and Mahomes take, which is like, they're probably going to throw the ball even more in the red zone and otherwise now, because they don't have a running back. And now they trade for Khalil Herbert or something, that would probably be a different story, but that is an interesting wrinkle. And then the Texans backfield too, Dameon Pierce, Cam Akers. Pierce did not play this past week, so Cam Akers, of course, did get the usage. And actually, quickly on Steele, when Pacheco went out of the game, you guys could see that Carson Steele got some goal line work. Early down work pretty much split between Steele and Pacheco when he was on the field. But Pacheco left the game pretty late, and Samaje Perine was pretty much only on the field for third downs, 2-minute drill, long down and distance stuff. So again, we didn't really get a lot of clarity on how they would use these guys if Pacheco was out, because it happened so late in the game that we really don't know. And it was also like right at the 2-minute drill that it happened too. So like Perine was going to get those snaps regardless. But anyways, the Texans running back, same thing. I mean, Joe Mixon goes out of the game, and you could see this usage and be like, oh, that's so bullish for Cam Akers. He got the goal line work. He got some of the plays there, but Dario Gumbawale was involved, which is not great. He got all of the third downs in the game and also all the 2-minute drill stuff pretty much. And Dameon Pierce didn't play. So we don't really know how Dameon Pierce will factor into this backfield. Again, I don't know what to do here either. Like, I think Pierce is going to be the guy that I go after because I think he's better than Cam Akers at this point in his career. And I don't
know about that though, man.
Like, I think he'll be cheaper than Akers as well on the waiver wire.
I agree, but I think Cam Akers looked better in the preseason.
He did.
B, I think he's a better fit for Slowick's scheme straight up. Because obviously when Dameon Pierce had his breakout year, it wasn't in the Slowick scheme. He had his worst year.
Akers has played his whole career in this game. Between Minnesota last year and the Rams before that, he's played his whole career in this game.
And maybe it's just me being brainwashed that, Achilles injuries don't matter, because I'm seeing what J.K. Dobbins was doing. He's doing fucking front flips in the end zone off of a torn Achilles, which
scared
is absurd.
the shit out of me, by the way.
Yeah, which, who knows? Maybe you can overcome one, but in Cam Akers' case, he has two. Maybe he's dead for water. Who knows? But I understand he fumbled on the goal line, but he actually looked pretty fucking good in the game.
Yeah, he did. You're right. I think Akers is definitely the option that most people will opt for. I think that people will pick up Akers over Pierce if given the choice, if they were the same amount of fab, for example. I will be opting for Pierce because I think that Pierce will go cheaper. And I don't really, again, maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I'm like, oh my God, Cam Akers is going to be the league-winning, guy that you need. This is why,
sorry, I got to make this point. This is why when you're drafting on Underdog, you take any type of ambiguous depth in backfields that have value that you can. Because, dude, like the amount of 16th, 17th, 18th round Cam Akers, Dameon Pierce's, look, I don't need them to be consistent week to week. But if there's a week like now where Joe Mixon's expected to be out and they have a usable week in my lineup, how many guys in that range are actually getting to my lineup to begin with?
No, there's guys in that range that didn't even make their 53s or aren't active on game days at the very least. So yeah, not a clear situation in Houston, but I do think that those two guys, just because I feel more confident in the players, Akers and Pierce versus Steele and Samaje Perine, they're my preferred option of who I would go after if I was in need of running back help. If you guys lost Pacheco or if you guys lost Mixon or whatever, like I would probably go after the Texans backfield over the Chiefs if given the choice.
Yeah, I would agree as well. And not to mention too, like we said, the Chiefs, once you get into the goal line, pass rate over expectation high, a lot of gimmicks in that offense. You know what the Texans do at the goal line?
Run.
They pound the fuck out of the rock. That's what they do. Smash mouth football. I mean, Slowick learned from Shanahan himself. Once you're inside the 5, inside the 10, why the hell are you going to pass the ball and potentially throw a red zone interception? I mean, like we saw with Bo.
I mean, Stroud never throws interceptions, period. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that helps because they're just running the piss out of the ball in the red.
That's probably why. Anyways, let's talk about the last couple waiver ads. And again, I'll go through my top 10 tomorrow.
Group the Patriots.
Yeah, we can. Jalen Polk, great usage, 69% of the routes, 14% target share in his second career game, finds the end zone. Definitely. If you guys need wide receiver depth, good option. Probably can't start him right away. No. But as the, week 5, week 6, as we get into there, I think he's a good stash. If you can afford to burn a bench spot,
especially when May comes in.
Exactly. Especially if Drake May comes in the next couple of weeks. I really like Jalen Polk. Get ahead of potentially him. Because what happens if Jalen Polk next week goes out, runs 94% of the routes, has 11 targets? Like he's going to be the highest waiver ad.
All your fab type of player.
Yeah. He's an all your fab type of guy. So get ahead of that if you can on Jalen Polk. His teammate, Hunter Henry. I was
just going to say this. Playing in with Hunter Henry. Yeah, I was just going to say with Hunter Henry, I mean, anytime you can get a tight end that runs above 80% of his team's routes, that can command any weekly share of the targets at above 30%, you want to stash him on your team. Jacoby Brissett is looking this guy's way quite often, like we saw. He not only led the Patriots in receiving, he dominated the Patriots in receiving. And Danny can eat the crow on Pop Douglas for now. I do want to see how this offense functions once Drake May is in the lineup, but I mean, none of these wide receivers at this point have value outside of maybe Jalen Polk stepping into that role. Jalen Polk, for the record, like Corey said, when I say not value right now, I'm meaning it that you're not putting Polk in your lineup probably in the next 2 weeks. But as soon as we see a 90% plus route share or 80+% route share, and we're seeing the targets per route run creep in the
And or Drake May is
20-25%
starting.
range, that is the main thing, because we're seeing a lot of 12 personnel. We're seeing a lot of, smash mouth grit football from the Patriots because Jacoby Brissett's under center. I can tell you right now, even though you want to keep structure, even though you want to keep uniform, it's tough not to see the fireworks when Drake May takes over. And I could not wait to take the biggest victory lap on the Drake May haters the moment he comes out there and starts shredding, man. I can't wait.
I can't wait for it. And speaking of victory laps, Hunter Henry versus Colby Parkinson aged pretty poorly. I mean, it didn't age
you
poorly.
cooked on that.
Parkinson's going to
you got me there.
Have some target share opportunities going forward, but Hunter Henry was the guy that I was adamantly on last week. So I feel good about getting ahead of him. Unfortunately, I listened to you in my home league, and I picked up Colby Parkinson and played him instead of Hunter Henry, who I wanted to pick up and play.
Stafford had 6 points, man. I mean, did anybody think that they would get blown out 41-10?
Here's the thing, though. I wanted to pick up Henry, and had I picked up Henry, I would have already won my matchup this week.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Bad,
instead of playing Parkinson. So that's why I'm annoyed, is that I didn't listen to my own advice. But anyways, the last guy we want to talk about is Khalil Herbert. On the off chance he gets traded to Kansas City for one, and on the normal chance that DeAndre Swift is averaging two yards per carry right now, and Herbert hasn't really done a whole lot yet in terms of like usage, but I think that the Bears, similar to what I said about the Jaguars, is like they're going to go into the film room and be like, okay, what isn't working about our offense right now? And it's Swift over Herbert currently is one thing that's not working in their offense. They have a rookie quarterback. They need a running game. And Khalil Herbert is better than DeAndre Swift at running the football. That's just a stone cold fact.
It's pretty hilarious because, like, going into the year, it's like, oh, like, why would the Eagles move on from Swift? Like, he was pretty efficient last year, and Saquon goes out there, looks absolutely unbelievable in his first game, scores 3 touchdowns, and DeAndre Swift has just looked urine. So, Pete, I feel for you as a Bears fan. There needs to be better days coming because I don't know how to go about it. I'm trying to find this right now. In terms of Khalil Herbert, obviously, again, this is the bet against DeAndre Swift. If you guys are worried about Roschon Johnson, I believe he's eaten more punches this season than he's gotten carries.
Yeah, that is correct. That's a stone cold fact about Roschon Johnson. So yeah,
how is that not a flag, by the way? How is that not a flag?
I don't know. I have no idea.
But yeah, and then again, like those are the waiver pickups. We will touch upon it now because again, appreciate you guys for being so patient because we did get some supers. We are done overall with the waivers. The first one from Christian, again, appreciate your patience here. Got offer Kyron and Amari for Brian Robinson Jr. and Ayuk full PPR. Should I take it? I'm worried Amari is washed. Honestly, so the way I'm looking at this is Kyron or Ayuk full PPR. I'm still taking Ayuk. I know he hasn't been good, and I know
Ayuk is going to be he's going to be in the trade targets video this week.
Kyron scares me, man. Like, I'm not going to lie. I understand people say, well, why are you scared? He's such a workhorse. I'm scared because he hasn't looked good, and Blake Corum actually got some work. I understand it was a blowout. That's the reason why Blake Corum got in. But it's a fucking big uptick from what we saw last week where he got 0 snaps. And I can tell you right now,
Rams are dropping like flies left, right, and center.
Do you have their offensive line is terrible, A, and B, do you have conviction right now that Kyron Williams is a better talent than Blake Corum is? Because they look like the same fucking player when they're on the field right now.
Yeah. And again, Brian Robinson Jr. versus Ayuk versus Amari Cooper. I'd rather have Brian Robinson Jr. right now. Like I would. And I like Amari still, and I feel confident that he can bounce back or whatever, but B-Rob looks pretty good, and he's like the engine of their offense.
For sure. I do have to point this out quick. Carchizzle, I believe it was you when you asked on the Flock League channel who you should be streaming at defense this week after seeing how good the defense and special teams for me did this week. And I advise you to pick up the Steelers. Hopefully you played the Steelers defense. I just have to say
Fairbairn gang, though. I love Fairbairn. He's my father. Anyway, Rolando, who will take over for Pacheco while he's out? Okay, I guess we probably kind of answered that when we got into the waiver segment. I believe it will be Steele on the early down work, Pirine on the long down and distance stuff, probably 55-45 split in terms of overall snaps, which honestly, it's not going to be worth 35% of your fab if somebody drops that on those Chiefs running backs. Could they be valuable? For sure. But I actually think the biggest winner of this Pacheco injury is the passing game.
Yeah, I would agree for sure. You got it. Okay.
Yeah, we already talked about the Chris Godwin apology here. Troy, again, appreciate your patience here. 10 team PPR, CMC and McLaurin for Travis Etienne and Brian Robinson Jr. My running backs are mixing. Tony and Bucky Irving have DJ Moore, Nico, and Drake London. So
ETN.
I'd rather have
side.
ETN.
Dude,
I'd rather have Brian Robinson very easily over Terry McLaurin, like very easily. And ETN over McCaffrey to me is not that hard of a decision because I think McCaffrey
no tank now. No tank either.
No tank, and I think that McCaffrey might legitimately be out like 10 weeks. Like it's possible he's out a long time.
I've said it before. The reason why I am so terrified about the McCaffrey injury situation is that Mason has looked so good. The Niners expect themselves to be, if not the top contender in the league, at the minimum at the top 2 with the Kansas City Chiefs. Christian McCaffrey is so vital to them for their playoff run. If Mason is doing the job in the regular season, why would you rush back your 29-year-old, $13 million per year running back? Actually, no, more, 18 or 19 million he signed, I believe.
Yeah, well, not only that, but like they rushed back. They've already done this. People aren't aware of this, but Dre Greenlaw had Achilles tendonitis in the playoffs last year. They rushed him back for the Super Bowl, and he tore his Achilles running onto the field.
Yep.
So they've done this before with one of their star players.
It was tendonitis with Dre. I didn't even realize that. Holy crap.
So they're going to be cautious with McCaffrey, like you said, especially because he's a running back versus a linebacker. Like you don't want to mess with this. It like Shanahan literally said in the press conference, I heard it. He said, we don't know how long he's going to be out. He's going to be out a minimum of 4 games. And he will be back on the field when he's back on the field. I don't know when he's going to be back. McCaffrey doesn't know when he's going to be back. The doctors don't even know when he's going to be back. He will not play until he is 100%, basically, is what he said.
Apparently what happens is every time McCaffrey goes to work to get a practice in or whatever, they see if he feels pain. And the minute he feels pain, he just was taken out of it. Like that was what was happening when he was trying to play in week 1.
Achilles. That's why.
Yes. Well, exactly. And I've seen people say, well, no, they actually can't, like this and that. It's like, well, if it's a tender area, if you already have tendonitis, what are the odds of you tearing the tendon when the tendon
doctors are saying he can? So that's who I'm listening to.
Yeah, same. I've heard people rebuttal on that, so I just wanted to make that point. It's just like, for example, if I strain my shoulder, like say I pull my shoulder, I strain my shoulder, how much more likely it is to break my collarbone at that point, knowing that I have a weakened shoulder and that collarbone's overcompensating.
Yeah. It's exactly the case of like all of these compensation injuries kind of play into factor there. Nico's a freaking superstar. Danny, take a bow. We already did that. Do I drop Chase Brown for Jaylen Warren? Yeah, I would rather have Jaylen Warren at this point. Chase Brown is definitely the type of guy that doesn't absolutely need to be rostered. Again, if you can afford to stash him still, I would. But if there's better options on the waiver wire for you this week, like the Chiefs or the Texans running backs are a good example, I would rather have them than Chase Brown at this point.
Chase Brown relegates down to high-end handcuff territory, in my opinion, because he's just simply not getting enough work to have standalone value in your lineup. However, do I still think he's an efficient player that if the Bengals offense is humming, could potentially be an RB1 top 15 running back if Moss were to go down or if he flat out took over for Moss? Sure. But at this point, we know what Jaylen Warren is. He has a role in this backfield. He's an efficient pass catcher. He's efficient between the tackles. And in his second game back, coming off of that preseason hamstring injury, he got 12, 13 touches. That's going to go up moving forward.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
In a Najee game script too.
It was a Najee game script. I think the tough thing with Chase Brown, and hopefully this happens, because I mentioned this for the Jaguars, I mentioned it for the Browns, I mentioned it for the Bears. Hopefully they look back at the tape, the Bengals, and they're like, yeah, this guy is not like that great of a running back, Zach Moss. Like we need to get Chase Brown more involved. I'm hoping that's the takeaway for them on the running game, and we see a little bit of an uptick in usage as a result.
Yeah, and Brock, I actually just seen your DM now. You DM'd me 15 minutes ago, but Josh Norris tweeted out an hour ago. The main reason why it's happening is that like they just trust Zach Moss so much more in pass protection. Zach Moss 17 pass pro reps versus Chase Brown 0 thus far. I don't know why that's the issue. I didn't think Chase Brown.
If the Bengals start not being dog shit, and if Higgins is back next week and they're like winning games, like it's possible Chase Brown will get more snaps.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Yeah, we'll see what happens. Again, for now, it's got to be Jaylen Warren, but hoping Chase Brown can step up. The London Mustang himself.
Yeah, HN offered to me for Neighbors and Dobbins. This is all brand deal for us right here. Like, would you do this? I think I would. I think I want HN here.
I think you have to. As much as
I love Dobbins. I think Dobbins is.
I love Neighbors too.
We're talking top 15 to 20 guys at their positions rest of the season, but HN is a different animal right now, even without Tua. The one thing I will say is like without Tua on the field, I don't think you have to pay this much for HN. That would be the only thing I would say.
Yeah, can you get it for any cheaper than this? Like, I am
Yeah, if you can get it
curious.
for any cheaper, like you can take Neighbors and make Neighbors into Devontae Smith or something, then I would prefer to do that. Or
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Dobbins becomes Brian Robinson. I would prefer to do that.
Yeah, I would agree. But with that being said, if you had to do it as
I
constructed,
think I
yeah,
would.
like
Yeah.
I would too.
Especially, again, deeper leagues, maybe not, but in any kind of shallow 10, 12 man regular PPR league, I would.
And show this right now. Is Kyron to sell high given the Rams injuries? I can tell you right now, going into the trade targets video, Kyron's going to be on my sells list. He's going to be. Like, I understand the work is good right now, but I am concerned about this Rams offensive line. They don't have the weapons on the outside that usually takes attention out of the backfield. Because I think that was the main reason. Now, with Kyron Williams, do I think he's a solid running back? Absolutely. I think he's a solid running back. The problem, though, is that the reason why he was so efficient on the stretch last year is when Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua were on the field, when Matthew Stafford was healthy, everybody's focused on this passing game. And that was when Kyron Williams had his big efficiency days. We've already seen in 2 weeks, with Puka going down, with Cooper Kupp going down, with injuries on the offensive line, him being the least efficient we have seen him since last year. Since the early portion of last year. So I'm really concerned if he doesn't have the insulation of this offense being a top 10 unit in the league. And he also doesn't have the pass catching ability that some other running backs going in his range would have. If we had to redraft today, where's Kyron Williams going in drafts?
Would you rather have Kyron Williams or Alvin Kamara rest of the season?
I think it's Kamara. I trust the offense more moving forward now with the injuries on the outside.
I think me like gross. Shudder and cringe.
I'm also more worried about Corum than I am about Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I think the answer is Kamara, but like that makes me shudder and cringe to answer that question.
Which by the way, we did see Justin Jefferson go for Kyron and Michael fucking Midman.
Yeah, I can't believe that happened. Don't get me started on that.
Michael Midman.
Oh, I have to play fucking Avery this week coming up. Jefferson's gonna cook my Garrett Wilson. I already know Garrett Wilson's gonna have 4 points next week, and Justin Jefferson's going for 36. Like, just because I took Garrett Wilson over Jefferson, I know that's gonna happen.
Hey Nathan, I love you, brother, but I'm just saying, if you had Jefferson in your lineup this week, I'm pretty sure you would have won.
Yeah, you probably would have. Thoughts on Mason for Montgomery and Cooper 10-team PPR redraft? Cooper would be first bench wide receiver behind AJ Brown, Wilson, and Flowers. Don't want to rush to sell. So I'm assuming you're selling Mason in this case. In a 10-team league, do you want to just keep the points over replacement production that Mason's giving you right now, or do you want Montgomery and Cooper at all?
I love hearing you come full circle on Mason because, yeah, I mean, he's just giving you so many points right now that I don't know.
I like Montgomery and Cooper. I think they're good options. I think in a 10-team league, I kind of just want however long Mason's the starter for, and it could be 7 games, could be 4 games, could be 10 games. I think Mason's just the value over replacement guy that you need in 10 teams.
Also, you want to hear how bad this aged for Rob?
What's that?
In our league? So I offered this literally 6 days ago, and he declined. And look how it's aged. Let me pull up the tab.
Oh, God. Oh.
He declined it.
Pacheco and Warren for B-Rob and Mason. Yikes.
He has McCaffrey, too.
Yeah, that's brutal for Rob there. Tough scene.
I had to show that because I just thought about that when I heard Mason go, because I think we're going to be doing our rest of season rankings today after we hop off stream before our Monday night stream. Where are you ranking Mason rest of the season? I have no fucking faith that McCaffrey is going to be back. I think there's a real possibility he's out for the year.
I'm not going to go that far, but Mason has to be at the very least an RB1 for the rest of the season. Even if he's only an RB1 or a top 8 running back for the next 6 games, he's still an RB1 for the rest of the season because of how much production value you're getting to get to your fantasy playoffs.
And let's play the game with McCaffrey.
If you have Jordan Mason and he was just an late addition to your team, like, you are the type of team that should be going after Puka Nacua right now, or like guys like that who are, you know, maybe banged up, who you can buy low on. Like, you have the ammo because of Jordan Mason just being gifted to you. And I'm literally punching myself in the face every day for not picking up Jordan Mason in our flock league when I was running.
Same,
0R.
bro.
I
Same,
can't
bro.
believe I didn't pick him up. I'm
Dude,
so mad at myself.
my worst spot on my roster is RB2. Could you imagine how unbeatable my team would be if I had Jordan Mason on my team right now?
It would be ridiculous.
I'm projected to score 168 points this week, and I have 6.1 from Alexander Madison in my lineup.
Yeah, thank God Madison scored, eh?
Fuck yeah, that was.
He would have literally had 0.1 otherwise.
Yeah, dude, that guy's urine. I spent.
Anyways, last two supers, and then we're gonna head off.
$13
here.
I'll never get back. I will say, by the way, I do notice this. I will point it out. Imagine the number 1 overall selection in fantasy not playing a single snap. Yeah, I do remember 2018 Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, I do. Also, David Johnson in 2017 played like half a game as well.
Okay. Traded Tyreek for MHJ Pittman, half PPR. I feel like I made a mistake. Where should I go from here? Pittman is not a needle moving asset, but it's so tough to grade this trade not knowing when Tua is going to be back. It's so tough to grade the trade not knowing Tua is going to be back.
I would rather have Tyreek, I think.
I think I would, but if you told me Tua is going to miss 6+ games, it's close.
Especially, I mean, Tom, if you're 0-2,
Marv looked so good.
If you're 0-2, this is a fine trade, but I would rather have Tyreek in a vacuum.
I agree, but Tyreek no Tua, like straight up Tyreek no Tua, I'm going to be ranking Marv ahead of him.
I won't.
My rankings.
I'll take Tyreek still. Yeah.
You try, I mean, what if the offense implied for 18.5 points this week?
It probably will be, but I still trust Tyreek. I think Waddle's a much bigger loser of this than Tyreek is.
Oh, I agree. Don't get me started. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anyways, Dylan, last question we're going to answer, then we're going to head off here again. If we
there's one more super as well.
Okay, so if you guys have enjoyed the stream so far, leave a like, of course, subscribe if you're new around here. We will be live for Monday Night Football. We can answer way more questions then, so apologies if we didn't get to any of your questions. Traded Hill and Charbonnet for Kyren and Pickens and Mostert for Worthy. Okay, so there's a lot of trades here. So Hill for Charbonnet and Kyren, I would rather have Hill for sure.
Hill and Charbonnet for Kyren and Pickens. It's Hill and Charbonnet, and it's not close in my opinion.
Yeah, Mostert for Worthy. Worthy's a steal there, obviously.
Yeah.
I hope that was you that traded Mostert. And then Singletary for Harris. Najee Harris, that's probably a wash.
I'd
probably
still take Najee. I don't know. That's close, yeah.
I like Singletary. I think it's probably close.
I'm just so worried about that offense, and yeah.
But yeah, the team looks good. I mean, Allen, Etienne, London, Collins. I mean, again, you're a little weaker at wide receiver because you only have Collins really as like your only go-to guy. And then same with tight end with Njoku out. You're a little bit weaker, but I think you're in a decent spot there, Dylan. And then final thing we're going to get into here, Carlos says,
yes.
What? Yeah, Kyren and 2/3 for Jamar Chase. Are you kidding me, dude? I would give up Kyren and a first for Jamar Chase if I could do it.
I'd give Kyren and 2 firsts if I had to.
Yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't do 2 first, but I'd do first and a second for sure.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a crazy deal, though. Just literally hit accept before he changes his mind because that's an easy trade. Anyways, appreciate you guys for joining us. Again, subscribe to the Flock League channel because we will have a new vlog tomorrow. Breaking down.
I am going ham.
Hopefully, the fantasy gods are with me in both of my matchups this week. I have a Monday night thriller. I need 14.5 from Drake London in my home league. I need Jalen Hurts, Bijan Robinson, and Jake Elliott to have less than 42 combined points in our Flock League. So that's where I'm at in terms of my matchups. And again, Flock League channel, you guys can see it there. Just search the Flock League, and we have a new vlog every Tuesday. Breaking down the week, and we typically do something anytime there's like a trade or any kind of big news.
Go comment up on our 2 fleeces of Mason. So I'll just let you guys know where to go comment right now. First video, like I said, the Waddle for Nico Collins one. Comment how I was right about Nico Collins. Also comment how Bush fleeced Mason, sending him Hollywood Brown right before he was put on IR.
Yeah, I mean, I got kind of lucky with that. I'm not going to lie, but I still think the trade, even if Hollywood was going to be back in like 3 weeks, was probably going to age well for me because I still believe in Amari Cooper. I know he hasn't really performed much, but yeah, I feel good about him. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe, check out the Flock Fantasy site. Danny mentioned we're going to be updating our rest of season rankings. Those will be live on the site by the end of today. So if you're wondering trades and things of that nature, we're going to do a big sweeping update to our site. Next week, we're going to do an update to our Dynasty rankings. The week after that, we should have an updated rest of season rankings tier list or something on the channel. I usually do that like once a month, solo vid throughout the season. I did that last year for you guys and you really seem to enjoy it. So definitely stay tuned for all that stuff. Anyways, but with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.